I always thought I knew who I was. My name's Mia Carter. I waited tables at a five-star restaurant in Manhattan called the Marlowe, the kind of place where the wine list had more pages than my resume. I was 22, juggling rent, student loans, and grief, still holding on to the last thread of memory I had of my mom, a woman who raised me alone and loved me fiercely. She used to say my dad was a broke jazz guitarist who died before I was born. Romantic, tragic, poetic, just like everything else in her life. I grew up on that story like it was gospel, never questioned it. Why would I? Until one rainy Tuesday night, when a man named Preston Langston, the billionaire tech mogul who practically owned half the skyline, walked into my section and sat alone at table 14. He was the kind of guy you didn't expect to see without an entourage. Towering presence, sharp jawline hair, like silver threads, perfectly in place. The kind of man who didn't look up when you spoke to him, only when you said something that didn't serve him. "Will there be anything else, sir?" I asked, trying to sound like I wasn't shaking. He didn't answer, just grunted and reached into his coat, pulling out a sleek black wallet. I thought he was grabbing a card to pay, but instead he flipped to the photo section, plastic sleeves worn from time. And I froze. There, right there, was a photo I knew like the back of my hand. My mother, smiling, laughing, her head tilted back, hair spilling around her like a halo. The same exact photo that lived in the locket she gave me before she died. Same faded corner, same little crease near her shoulder. It wasn't similar. It wasn't close. It was the photo. My voice caught in my throat, but something primal took over. "Excuse me, sir," I said. He looked up, clearly annoyed. "What is it?" I pointed, hand trembling. "That picture in your wallet. That's my mom." You'd think a man like him would laugh or accuse me of something crazy. But his face changed. His eyes went from cold steel to something almost human. He stared at the photo, then at me, then back again. "What's her name?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Celeste Carter." He flinched. Just slightly, but I saw it. Next thing I knew, the manager was sprinting over, apologizing, about to toss me out. But Mr. Langston raised a hand. "Leave us." And just like that, it was me and the man with my mother's face in his wallet. He told me to sit. I did. Then he said something that knocked the air clean out of my lungs. "Your mother didn't tell you the truth." My heart started pounding. "He wasn't a musician," he said. "He wasn't dead. He was Preston Langston. And according to him, he was the man who took that photo. The man who loved her. The man who lost her." I left that night with my head spinning and his business card burning a hole in my coat pocket. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just tore through every box of my mom's things, desperate to find something that made sense. That's when I found it. A false bottom in the old keepsake box she'd left me. Inside, dozens of letters. Some from him, and one from her. A letter she wrote but never sent. To my Preston, it began. She wrote about how she'd overheard his parents talking one day while he was away. About how they saw her as a temporary distraction, a sweet girl from nowhere who didn't belong in their world. She wrote about how they planned to remove her, like she was a stain. But worse, she wrote that she was pregnant. With me. And she left. Not because she stopped loving him, but because she loved me more. She didn't want me growing up a secret, a scandal, a pawn in some billionaire family's game. So she made up a father who was kind and poor and dead because that was a cleaner wound. Reading that letter broke something in me, but it also built something else. I called him the next morning, told him I had something he needed to see. When I handed him the letter, I watched 23 years of questions tear through him like a hurricane. His hands shook, his jaw clenched, and then he cried. This man who built an empire with nothing but power and pride crumbled. "She never stopped loving me," he said. I nodded. "She loved you so much, she gave you up." For a moment, we just sat there, two strangers bound by the same ghost. I thought that was the end, but it was only the beginning. He tried to fix things the only way he knew how, with money. He sent me a letter erasing my student debt. I sent it back. He offered to buy me an apartment. I told him he could keep his penthouses. I didn't want a billionaire. I wanted my dad. So we started over. Slowly. Coffee in diners instead of dinners at rooftop lounges. Walks through the old village where he first met my mom. And one day he took me to a gallery. A small, tucked-away place he'd been funding for years under a fake name. It was the first gallery to ever show my mom's paintings. And hanging there in the center of the atrium was a painting. Huge, chaotic, breathtaking. Deep blues crashing against splashes of green and gold. A storm at sea with a tiny white sailboat in the distance. Its title, An Ocean Apart. It gutted me. Right there in the middle of that gallery, I cried. Not the quiet kind. The kind where your chest caves in. Where you feel every ounce of love loss and legacy slamming into you at once. He stood beside me, silent, steady. Then softly he said, "She knew I'd see it one day." We stood there for a long time. Not as strangers anymore, but as survivors. Of love that never died. Of lies that were told to protect. Of a truth that didn't set us free, but showed us where to begin. We can't get back the years we lost. We'll never have family dinners or holiday photos from my childhood. But we have this two people standing on opposite shores finally building a bridge. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Now I need to ask you something. If you found out your entire life was built on a lie, but that lie was told to protect you, would you forgive it? Would you forgive them? Tell me in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if this story moved you even half as much as it did me, hit like, share it with someone who needs it, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us how messy, painful, and beautiful real love can be. I always thought I knew who I was. My name's Mia Carter. I waited tables at a 5-star restaurant in Manhattan called the Marlowe, the kind of place where the wine list had more pages than my resume. I was 22, juggling rent, student loans, and grief. Still holding on to the last thread of memory I had of my mom, a woman who raised me alone and loved me fiercely. She used to say my dad was a broke jazz guitarist who died before I was born. Romantic, tragic, poetic, just like everything else in her life. I grew up on that story like it was gospel, never questioned it. Why would I? Until one rainy Tuesday night, when a man named Preston Langston, the billionaire tech mogul who practically owned half the skyline, walked into my section and sat alone at table 14. He was the kind of guy you didn't expect to see without an entourage.